Today, we're talking about the things you need to know before taking your horse into grizzly bear country. Earlier this year, a couple buddies and I went into the Shoshone Wilderness area just outside of Meeteetse, Wyoming for a pack trip to scout for bull elk on a tag that one of my friends had drawn. Now, grizzly bear country is a little bit of a different beast. This is really, really rugged country. Right off the bat, when we're thinking about horses and what you're going to take, if you're trying to decide which horses to take, I think it's okay to take younger horses that need some experience. But I would say ride initially the horse that has some experience and is the most seasoned. Pack on the one that needs a little bit of experience. And I actually brought a third horse as well for just kind of a remount, right? If you're in really rugged country, sometimes it helps to have a remount. So that's what I did. Right off the bat, I can tell you the rivers were super high and fast from the winter last year. So when we went in initially with our pack string, my buddy's horse decided it was not crossing. And the reason I say ride your more experienced horse right off the bat is because he was on a less experienced horse and it went down crossing this water and they were both soaked and we had a 12-mile ride in. So right off the bat, I would say start off with your more seasoned, experienced horse, and then after your others are kind of warmed up, after you've maybe been there a couple of days, then you can maybe pull out the less experienced ones and start getting some time on them, because that time is really good for your horses, and those miles are really good in rugged territory like that. So that's what I would say about the horse side of things. The next thing I would say, in terms of self-defense, I talked to a couple of outfitters that have been guiding in grizzly bear country for a long time. Their recommendation was, yeah, you could do bear spray, you can do a sidearm, but their recommendation was really like, hey, get a short-barreled shotgun and alternate between double-aught buckshot and slugs. So that's what we did. Fortunately, we didn't have to use them at all, but about probably 200 yards into the trail, there was a big grizzly bear track. And then a couple miles in, there were wolf tracks. So, I mean, this is some really, really rugged country that we were in. We made camp over by a river, and there was bear sign all over that was pretty fresh. There were claw marks on trees and all kinds of stuff. So just kind of stuff that makes your hair stand up on edge. And I think it's good for you to put yourself in those scenarios a little bit, just to kind of see what you're made of. It was absolutely beautiful. We didn't see hardly a soul. There was one guy in his 70s that we ran into while we were up there. But just a really cool experience, saw a ton of elk, and had some great experience for the horses. So I think one of the best recommendations that I got before going in was bring a dog. So I had my Border Collie Todd with me, and he slept right outside my tent. Animals tend to be a little bit more alert, and so I don't believe in having dogs in the tent, but I let him sleep just outside. We didn't have any bears in camp, and to be honest with you, bears don't really like horses, so when you highline them around your camp, if you're sleeping not too far away from them, bears tend to stay away. For a highline setup, we essentially just used some great big old hay tie downs. I've used a lot of different things for highline setups, and those tie downs, everything else comes loose. But if you use those tie downs, I actually think they're easier on the trees because they're fatter than using something like a rope. And that's actually, if you're in a wilderness area, you have to highline, right? You're not supposed to tie up to trees for more than just a couple of minutes, especially overnight. And If you do tie your horses up to trees overnight, a lot of times they'll get wrapped up in the rope. They'll get rope burns. So just a few tips when you're on pack trips. Now, we had an experience. So we were up on top of this mountain scouting elk. We're at probably 10 or 11,000 feet. We've got a good scope set up. We're looking around. And this 72-year-old guy comes rolling up the mountain. This is one of the coolest guys I've ever met in my life, all by himself. We're 12 miles into a really remote area, and this guy's just coming shed hunting. So we started talking to him, and he spent his career as a wildlife biologist focused on grizzly bears and wolves. And he said, this is definitely grizz country. And actually, as we were talking to him, we spotted a mom and two cubs, sow and two cubs, on a hill just over across the valley. So really cool guy that we talked to. He gave us some good tips, and then we actually found out after talking to him, there was a way better path out than the one we took in. The one we took in had trails that were washed out right next to a really fast-moving river, so it was pretty sketchy on the horses. But on the way out, he gave us a route where we didn't have to cross the river except for right by the parking lot. So I wish we'd have known that before going in. We were all three of us in new country that we hadn't been in before. But a great experience for the horses, great experience for us. Really, again, beautiful country, saw so many animals. Just gained an appreciation for the Western U.S. and what it is. So if I could do it all over again, I actually would have brought more spare horseshoes. I lost a couple of shoes while I was up there. I was the shoer, not another shoer. It was my fault. And I actually ended up bringing an outside horse of a buddy's that was not in very good shape for that trip. And he really, really struggled. He was okay to pack on, but to ride, it was just a little bit too much weight for him. And he just wasn't in good shape. So the other thing I would say is make sure your horses are in pretty good shape before going into a region like that. I don't think I did him a whole lot of favors by hauling him in there. So in kind of recapping this trip, we did a lot of research before going in there. We didn't do enough. We called some outfitters. They gave us some guidance. But in terms of like studying the maps, right, because going in, we crossed the river way too many times. At one point, my border collie, Todd, got washed down river, and he went under the water, and I was loping down the side trying to get to him. And then he ended up coming out of some willows, and I actually thought I almost thought I lost him. So if we would have studied the maps, we wouldn't have had to cross the river as many times. So I would say, like, number one is know the area you're going to. Study the maps, talk to people that have been there. That'll help you a lot. Number two, I would say have a dog with you in grizzly bear country. They're just way more alert than we are. And if you can have one of those sleeping outside your tent to alarm you if anything happens, that's kind of key. The other thing I would say is bring at least a couple horses that you really trust. I am glad I brought a remount because when you're in big country like that, you just never know what you're going to run into. You never know when your horses are going to start to get worn out, and so you need to kind of swap those. So having a remount was really good. Yeah, and you don't have to have a firearm, but I'm going to recommend that you at least have bear spray with you. I mean, that seems super obvious, but there's a lot of people that I think go into areas like that with a just light backpack on just because they want the experience and the thrill. But if you got a family to come home to, make sure you got a way to defend yourself. I also believe in packing really light. I don't bring in heavy canvas tents. I bring in really, really light gear. Again, because I want my horses to have as much energy as possible. So we did mountain house meals just with a jet boil and just really light sleeping bags and gear. At least I did. I do wish I would have brought a camp chair. Because when you're back that far, you do want just maybe like one luxury. So that was the one luxury I wish I would have brought, would be like a camp chair. Everything else, though, was solid. This cat thinks he rules my house and my barn. But I haven't seen a mouse in here, so he's doing his job. Nice work, Ranch Kitty. It's a really cool story about this 72-year-old guy we met on top of this mountain. When we got back into, we exchanged phone numbers with him. When we got back into service, he told us that right after we ran into him on top of this mountain, he was going down a trail. And again, he was out shed hunting. And he said his dog was way ahead down the trail, maybe a couple hundred yards, and it came sprinting back, and there was a bear on his tail. And he fired a couple warning shots. He was carrying a Kimber 1911, which is a .45 caliber handgun. But you just kind of got to be on your toes in those areas. So really cool guy. If I'm still doing that when I'm 72, that'd be awesome. So thanks for sticking with us through kind of this more uncut edition where we're just kind of talking through some experiences that we've had. Really, really cool experience being in Unit 61 outside of Meeteetse. Just phenomenal country and territory, just so rugged, beautiful. So thanks for staying with us. Happy riding. Adios. He was out there for just 3 or 4 days. Dude, his wife he's 72 years old, and his wife's just like, yeah. That's manly. Go, that's as manly as you get. Like, it doesn't matter how cool you think you are. If you're 72 years old and you're hoofing it up a mountain on foot with just your dog and a pistol, you're badass. That's as cool as you get.